Finally.
All right.
All right. Well, here we are, all the way across the planet.
Yep. Awesome.
So, anyways, we've chatted a little online here and there. We're in a couple groups on Facebook together. So I was excited to get a chance to record a video with you. Um,
Awesome.
I run a little group on Facebook called Autistic Carnivores, and I believe you're a member in there. I see your videos get posted in
Yep.
there regularly.
Yep.
So I got a little list of questions. I think you got a chance to take a look at it, right?
Sure did. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Look like some pretty good questions too.
Well, I'm glad you approve. I'm excited to be doing this interview with you, man.
Good. Good.
So, what in essence
Awesome.
is your diet?
I'm really happy to
Great. I'm sorry. I didn't
say
mean to.
again.
I said, yeah, sorry. I didn't
Oh,
mean to cut you
hmm?
off. I was just saying, what in essence is your dietary philosophy?
Right. Okay. So, I mean, I guess the starting point for me is around first and foremost as a scientist working out what the dietary requirements really genuinely are for human beings and to base a diet around providing all those required nutrients that we need to take in, the things that we can't synthesize for ourselves, basically. So that was the starting point. And then from there, it goes to, well, what things can we consume? What things can we eat that we don't need to that can lead us to problems and cause us problems? My research into it thus far, my own personal experiences as well, all combined, come down to tell me that the things that we can eat that we don't need to eat that causes problems fall into generally the category of plants, pretty much. When we consume plant-based foods, plant-based materials, generally it's that leads to problems with our health. There is nothing in any form of plant food that we require that we can't get from a fully animal based diet. And so that's kind of the basis of where I'm coming from. So a lot of people have sort of said to me, recently, why don't you like raw dairy? And it's not that I dislike raw dairy. I've got nothing against raw dairy or indeed pasteurized dairy, whatever. What I'm saying about dairy to people is there's no requirement. You don't have to be having that stuff. Okay. If you think or if you feel like raw dairy or indeed pasteurized dairy is doing you some good, if you're not reacting badly to it, if you're not suffering any consequences, then absolutely fill your boots up. I say the same thing to people about plants and plant based foods. Look, if you're enjoying them, if you are happy with your life, if you are happy with your health, if you don't think there's anything that's broke and needs fixing, then don't fix it. It's no skin off my nose. So that's basically it in terms of, excuse me, sorry about that, my philosophy. That's where it comes from.
Very good. So, tell me, what sort of experience do you have with autism?
So, anyone that's watched any of my videos, I have a personal history with what is generally called mild form of autism. The label mild, I mean, I don't know where that would come from. I guess it just means that I'm not completely incapable of doing certain things. I'm not, I don't see it as any form of disability of any kind. Actually, I see it as a strength. I see it as a personality trait. The particular form of autism that I have myself is called pathological demand avoidance syndrome, or PDA. It presents itself in a certain way, like most forms of autism do. It has its own sort of way that the people that experience PDA tend to think and react and interact with the world around them and people around them. And I guess it's only really in recent years that I've become aware of the fact that that's what I've got going on for myself. That explains my personality, my behavior, my actions and reactions to things. And it's really getting an understanding of that that's been really helpful in terms of helping myself to manage it, and to sort of negotiate my way through the world, as best as I can. So yeah, that's kind of my personal experience. That's it's there are. I mean, I know you've got a question about it later, so I'll answer it then. And also, there are other members of the family who have, expressed various different forms of autism as well. So I'll leave that there so that you can ask that question, and I can answer that there. But that's me. It's pathological demand avoidance syndrome. It is a form of autism. It's on the spectrum. It's generally classed as mild, but it can have very, very serious ramifications and very serious, effects in the world. It has affected my life greatly, and has shaped the way, things have turned out for me in a lot of different interactions. And in fact, if I'd known about it earlier in life and understood what was going on, I may have been able to manage various different things and situations differently. So knowing about it is half the battle for me anyway.
Amen. I got the same experience. So, you want to describe that symptom for us a little bit, and maybe any other symptoms you have?
Sure. PDA thing, basically, it means that generally when I rightly or wrongly perceive, accurately or inaccurately, that someone is demand of me or saying you have to do such and such, you have to behave in a form to a certain standard, we require you to do something, you need to fit in with us, that causes me to what they call pathologically rail against that, to avoid that, to do absolutely everything in my power to resist that demand that's being placed on me, whether it's a real demand or whether it's just, it causes me to dig my heels in. It causes me sometimes to cut my own nose off to spite my face. It can cause explosive changes in mood. It can cause completely irrational anger outbursts. In some individuals, it can cause violent outbursts. I've got to a point where I've put that stuff behind me. I don't sort of lash out physically, like some even adults with PDA do. But that is part of the PDA. It also means that we have a very, almost paradoxically, a very high standard of what we expect from others in terms of the way that others speak to us and respect us, and don't disrespect me or else there'll be a problem, and that kind of. And people will see that in my videos, actually, in some of my interactions with folks that want to argue with me online about nutritional science, for example, or whatever else, stuff that I'm absolutely expert in, and people might just be saying, well, look, my opinion is this, and wanting to sort of get me to sometimes engage in a discussion about some of this stuff. But if they word it in a way that's disrespectful, or I perceive it to be disrespectful, whether it is or not, or whether that's their intention or not, that can cause me to, if I'm not on my game, instead of actually realizing that others think and interact with each other differently to what I would want them to and expect them to, I need to sort of understand that their intent is not to cause me to flare up and explode at them and behave like, for want of a better term, an asshole towards them. So I have to sometimes I have to work really hard at that and say, like, my immediate instinctual response is to lash out at somebody. I have to stop and go, okay, what is it that they're actually trying to achieve? What do they want from me? What can I actually do to be of service to this person, instead of exploding at them and shouting at them and calling them 7 flavors of asshole or whatever it is. So there's that bit. People with PDA can have a really high affinity, with structure and systems and organization and tidiness and tables and charts and numbers and stuff, which you'll see obviously in my background in terms of the scientific thing, but they can also be quite again, paradoxically, quite sort of a creative, artistic, musical. So again, I'm also a bit of a musician in my own time as well. So there's kind of that juxtaposition and that kind of changing from almost one personality to another personality from time to time. So while there are limitations, while there are things that can cause me problems interacting with others in the world, I also see the condition, if you like, as a real source of strength, a real source of ability to do things that others can't do. So there are positives as well, I guess. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I feel about all of that. Mm.
Excellent. One of the things I discovered myself is I was trying to get this message out about diet and how it can change your life, really impact
Yeah,
things.
yeah,
And what I found out was happening sort of in parallel was a sort of exposing our experience as particularly, autistic adults to people who didn't really know what it was we were going through because, of course, the spectrum is so broad and there's so many people that were
yeah,
diagnosed as
yeah,
adults or self-diagnosed along the way. I saw that the non-autistic people were kind of fascinated by things like what you described in your description there. So I think it's
mm.
good. I'm my agenda is this: is I'm trying to sort of. Oh, cheers! By the way,
Cheers. Oh, good. This, by the way, is meat juice. This is not beer. This is meat juice.
meat juice.
That's what
Yes,
this
this
is.
is pure blood.
Yeah.
So,
Good. Excellent. Excellent. Good. Yeah.
um, I
Good.
I I I kind of see like that dual purpose now. And when we make videos or talk about our experiences, not only can we get out the message that changing your diet can make a huge impact, but I see people who just tangentially were exposed to these discussions about our experience of what's going on and what this autistic umbrella envelops for us. They're
Mm.
keying in and tuning into it and really sort of uh, broadening the understanding. And I don't want to say too much about acceptance. I don't think everything has to be accepted, but the understandings there and the conversations happening, and who could want more than that at this point, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, I think all of us, maybe not just people with autism, but also, or anything on the spectrum. I mean, because as you say, the autism spectrum is so broad. But I think it's actually a human thing that we all just want actually to be accepted, to be acknowledged for who we are, for people to understand what we feel our needs are, and to understand when it is you get a bad reaction from somebody else, what it is that motivates that. And, you know, along those lines, you could almost sort of say that everybody in the world is on the spectrum somewhere because we all have our bugbears and our quirks and our foibles. We all have those things that will piss us off to the point where that's a red flag. And if you go there, you get, you're gonna have a problem. So, I don't even really think about myself as someone who, as I say, has a condition. I see it as a hardwiring issue. It's the way my brain is wired. There is clearly a genetic influence on how that occurs, but how it expresses itself is down to me. I can moderate it. I can exert some control over it and how it affects me and how I interact with the world. Which kind of feathers into the question which is coming up about how the dietary thing can impact on that, I guess.
That is
So, I mean, I
exactly
guess
the
that
next
leads into that quite
question.
well. Exactly. Funny that because I've read the list of questions, so I can sort of help you kind of segue into it. So, yeah, and that's exactly it. So, how does the diet, impact? How does it? What's the importance of diet? And I
Yeah.
guess for me, what I've found is that, look, this is my own experience. This is an n equals one naturalistic observation. That means this is what I personally have experienced, and what I've seen in others, a little bit, and that is that if a person is eating a diet which predisposes them to a lot of systemic inflammation, that to lead to a situation where any of the personality stuff really actually becomes heightened. The autism actually becomes worse. The presentation becomes worse. The self control becomes worse. The ability to moderate one's own natural instinct to poke somebody in the eye, sort of thing,
Hmm.
that becomes less adept, if you like. And I wouldn't go around poking anybody in the eye. That's not what I'm suggesting. But it's that little voice saying, poke him in the eye, poke him in the eye. That can get louder, and when you're inflamed and not in a good situation, that way, to me, that's the biggest impactor. And I also have a sort of a history of other sort of things like fibromyalgia and stuff like that, which, if you've got everything going wrong all at once and you're eating the wrong thing and you're all inflamed and you're all unable to control yourself and you're all pissed off and sore and tired and all of that kind of stuff, it just makes everything worse. I mean, the analogy is like a tired child that just needs to have time out or go and have a sleep or something. But it's not sleep and deal with. You actually need to deal with the chronic systemic inflammation. And what it turns out is that there are so many reasons why a plant-based diet, or even a diet that contains a significant amount of plant foods, is going to predispose you, or is going to predispose one, I should say, to a chronic systemic inflammatory situation. And if you are someone who does deal with autism, who does have an autism spectrum situation in their life, then the odds are that it's going to be a negative thing in terms of the management of that situation and how you interact with the rest of the universe around you. That's what I've certainly found, and what I've found in the roughly 6 months or so that I've been a carnivore, plus or minus. I've had brief periods where I've gone off the rails again. We are all human beings. There are things out there to tempt us that are designed to eat them. And I've done that from time to time, and I've suffered terribly every time I've gone. I've lost ground. I've lost. I didn't realize, I guess, how, for want of a better term, how badly I was dealing with the universe before, and then you get into a situation where you've been doing really well, and then you don't sort of necessarily recognize that in yourself, or understand, yeah, I'm doing really well. Actually, I'm having good interactions. I'm building a successful YouTube career. I'm moving on from a career I no longer want to have any part of, the academic career. I've got a successful Patreon channel, which people can certainly go and support if you'd like to. That'd be really appreciated, boys and girls. Um, I'm having interactions online with people who both agree with me, and also people who don't, like Dr. Garth Davis the other day. And even 6 months ago, if someone came online and said, I'm a vegan and veganism's the way to go, instead of me having a discussion with that person, I would have just shouted at that person and said, you're an idiot.
You
Because
know,
I wasn't in the space to deal with that.
I was kind of shocked at how that conversation went with Garth Davis. I expected a little more fireworks, and then, he's like, we should do this
Oh, it's coming.
regularly.
Don't worry. Don't worry. It's coming.
So, I,
Mm.
I, I thought that was a
Yeah.
good thing because I've seen some of his other content, and I know how adamant he is about a plant-based diet. I know he's a vegan and all that, and I was a little shocked at how that conversation went. I was actually really encouraged by it, you
Mm.
know. So
Yeah, me
for
too.
whatever it's
Yeah.
worth, I look forward to seeing that continue.
Yeah, thanks. And I do too, because at the end of the day, I mean, Garth and I actually did spend quite a bit of time prior to that discussing it, privately in the background. We did plan it. We did go, this is how we want to present this thing. We don't want to be another, bloody circus show like the Richard and Frank show that we saw yesterday. My
Yeah.
goodness, for nobody got anything out of that. I don't think that was just ridiculous.
I kind of felt bad for both of them.
Nobody got anything. Oh, it was tragic and terrible, actually. It really seriously came across like a couple of kids in the sandpit fighting over Lego blocks or whatever it was. And it's across. Nobody got anything across there.
Did you
Richard
happen?
behaved in his usual typical. Go
Did
on, sorry.
did you happen to see the Joe Rogan episode with Gary Taubes and Stefan Niangay?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's still on my list of things to look at. I mean, I've got a list of viewings and readings and things that I need to
Sure.
do to remain current every week, and that is definitely on my list. I've actually been running from interview to interview to interview pretty much this week. I mean, I'm speaking to you now. This morning I was talking to Dr. Paul, probably tomorrow for people. So stick around for that. That one was an awesome discussion with Dr. Paul Saladino. Well worth a look. Yeah, obviously I had Garth the other day, and there'll be ongoing discussions with Garth about NEU5GC, TMAO, oxidation status. Do we need fiber? Do we not need fiber? And we'll be, dealing with that stuff at a very high scientific level, but trying to do it in a way that's accessible to people. I'm talking to somebody else tomorrow morning. I have got my list right in front of me, so I forget. It's so busy. And also, drum roll, everybody. I had contact last night, my time, from Dr. Sean Baker, who wants to talk to me on his podcast. So yes,
Yeah.
Sean Baker is coming up. So look forward to that one. I'm
I knew.
absolutely chuffed
I'll
to
let you
be
in on a
invited to
secret.
that. So
I kind of knew that was coming
okay, good,
because I'm a
good,
Patreon sponsor uh, for his HBO podcast, and he mentioned you,
right,
and that and then that's why I
brilliant.
asked you, and I was like, oh, what am I doing asking you if you're going to be on his show? I should ask you to be on my show. Why not?
Yes,
Let's do a
absolutely,
video
yeah.
together. Yeah, Sean's a great guy.
Okay, I was certainly, yeah, and I certainly do appreciate any and all input that others in the background are doing to sort of encourage, collaborations between myself and pretty much anybody who has a message to put out there, and the more broadly, the more widely we can get the message out there about the carnivorous lifestyle and what it's doing for people, so much the better. So yeah, awesome,
I'm
awesome.
trying to build a community where, obviously my angle is the diet, but I've got a lot of friends that are
Mhm.
in other, kind of have groups based on other aspects of the autistic community. And of course, myself having had autoimmune diseases, that's kind of the third spoke in the wheel for me. So I'm always trying to branch out and
Yeah,
get everybody to start talking. And that's really what this video is about for me. So.
awesome. Yeah. Mm.
So tell me, do you have to do anything else besides the diet to manage your symptoms?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, there's nothing else physically that I'm doing. Medications, and I don't know. That's a question for later on down the track of questions. So we'll leave that one there for now. But I do need to keep continually working on myself. I do need to keep thinking about how I'm reacting to people, and also thinking to me. I mean, those that don't fall on the autism spectrum at all and wouldn't necessarily relate to this or understand this, but often someone like myself in my position will have an interaction with somebody out there in the world that didn't go well or that was negative in some way. And often the person with autism will be left feeling confused and isolated because they won't understand, well, what went wrong there? What did I do wrong? Why did
Exactly.
that person react to me that way? Um, and so I do need to spend a lot of time rehashing in my mind, things that have happened during the day. What could I have done differently? How did I get that wrong? If that was a situation that didn't go, or actually, did I do everything right? And was that person just an asshole? Because there are assholes out there. There are actually only really about probably half a dozen really nasty people in the world. They just get around a lot. is the way I look at it. One of them's got a vegan supporting channel. Actually, there's another one that's got a vegan supporting channel as well. Maybe they're all vegans. I don't know. I'm kidding. They're not all vegans.
Yeah. Well, I
But
think
yes.
a lot of those
So, I
outspoken
mean,
people in the vegan community are people that are kind of already on the edge and really looking for a mission in life, and that's why we hear so much from them.
yeah. Yeah.
So, did you?
And, this,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go on. I was just going to say that the kind of the nastiness, the whole really hostility towards anyone that doesn't believe in their ideology or that argues against their ideologies, it's just stunning to me with the vegans. It's amazing, but yeah, I guess as you say, that's part of their indoctrination to behave that way. I don't know.
At least the noisy ones. So,
Yeah.
tell me, did you have any digestive issues in your life before you got onto this way of eating?
Oh, mode. Yes, in short, basically just about everyone you can imagine. It's starting from the first thing that I can remember being aware of is sort of starting from really early teenage onwards. I had I have had diverticulosis and diverticulitis as well. I'm certainly gluten intolerant, which is now no longer an issue because I'm basically carnivore and I don't consume stuff with gluten in it, except for very, very occasionally in very small amounts, like maybe meat juice has got some gluten in it. Sure. I'm not a Crohn's disease. I don't fall to bits immediately, but I certainly do have a non-zero tolerance level where if I do cross that, I can have bowel issues, but certainly not eating anything that consumes gluten anymore. So you sort of sorted out a lot of issues there. Um, I have had pancreatitis, which
Really?
is usually induced in people who, yeah, it's usually in people who have alcoholic situation.
Yeah.
It's very, very rare. Otherwise, I've had that. I had it as a young teenager, so it certainly wasn't drinking that was involved in that. The medics put it down to viral because that's their way of saying we have no idea. But to me, it was definitely a reaction to plant toxins and reactions to plant-based issues.
Hmm.
I had a bunch of skin conditions and things, which obviously stem from digestive disorders as well. Yeah, so pretty much I had all sorts of things going on in that regard. Funnily enough, all of those things just evaporated and dissolved within 2 weeks of starting the carnivore diet. I'd been ketogenic for about 20 years, which got me to sort of an 85% remission
Wow.
status. I was what I'd call 85% well for 20 years,
Huh.
but that 15%, is enough to drag you down over a number of years. And so when I got to the point where I decided I was going to pull out of academia, I wasn't going to be an academic and teach in that environment anymore. I wasn't going to try and play their game, their rules anymore. I was going to do my own thing, set up my own YouTube business and have my own Patreon, and they could basically go and jump off a cliff as far as I was concerned. And that was at the time that I started doing a bit more research into it. The carnivore diet thing was just coming into vogue at that time, and I came across Sean Baker. Obviously, the Petersons were across, and then I saw the Joe Rogan thing, and it expanded from there. And I started looking into it more and more. And obviously, being a trained scientist, I was able to link the dots and go, yep, this all makes perfect sense. Yes, this works. and then I was prepared to try it myself for a month, which was what I committed to do. And as I say, within 2 weeks, like 99.9% everything was sorted out. Uh, um, and it remains pretty much at that sort of level, pretty much basically 100% in terms of my health, the way I feel about the universe, the way I interact with the universe. But as soon as I kind of go off the rails and do something wrong, in terms of diets, or eating some plant-based stuff or some sugar, or that kind of nonsense, straight away the next day I'm straight back to fibromyalgia, I'm straight back to pain and suffering, I'm straight back to feeling like shit, and both physically and emotionally and socially. So there it is in a nutshell in terms of that. Yeah.
Did you have any like reoccurring ear infections or sore throats as a kid?
Yeah, I remember having a history of it. I remember having a history of being very susceptible to, infections of all sorts, be they ear, nose, and throat. Tonsillitis. I had my tonsils removed
So did
when I
I.
was years old, I think. Yeah, it was kind of the standard thing at the time. You got
Yeah.
tonsillitis at about 7, and they took him out. So, that's what that was about. Well,
So what about, let's get to the family
maybe
question
10.
then. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't
Yeah,
mean to cut you off, but go ahead. We don't have to stick to the list. I just figure it's easier when you got something to work with.
no, it's fine. We're pre-approved questions, if you like. I was just going to say, just to finish off that point, that also, up until about maybe 10 years ago, so maybe about 10 years into my ketogenic period of my life, I was a very, very serious upper respiratory tract infection, which usually also chest and became a chest infection at least once a year, every single year without fail. And that's also now something that I just don't experience anymore. My immune system seems to be much more competent. I don't have those issues. I just don't suffer those kind of illnesses at all anymore. So that was just the finish of that one. So that being said, let's do go on with the next question.
Yeah, the next one is just, did you notice any sort of autistic traits or Asperger traits in any family members? What sort of anecdotal genealogical
Yeah,
tentacles did you see?
that's a really, really interesting one, and there's a bit of a story there. Basically, on mother's side of the family was the only side of my family that I had any idea about the genetics about, because my late father was completely estranged from his entire family, other than his immediate family with my mum and myself and my two siblings. He actually had a family. He had a marriage prior to my mum. He had a family prior to that. He had children prior to
Mm.
that, and I didn't know anything about them whatsoever. I had no contact with them at all.
Mm.
So I was working purely on genetics from the things that was happening, on my mum's side of the family, or indeed, I guess it's more on the immediate family. Um, I was just thought of as a difficult person. I was just thought of as someone that had a personality that was particularly abrasive, and that was a real problem for everybody. And um, was not able to sort of hold down a regular job situation, or stay in any sort of social grouping for any period of time. I was moving around and doing things that, always, looking for the next people to interact with, and, never mind the old people because I pissed them off or whatever else, or, that was my whole life, right up until when I was really in my mid 20s. And at that point, my youngest sister got married and started a family, and sort of it was around about the time that her oldest son was about maybe 2 or 3 years old. She had him assessed, and they came back and said, "Oh, this child has an autism spectrum situation. That was Asperger's syndrome that he experiences, he deals with." And From there, we went back and went, ooh. Well, that explains my older brother, who is by far and away more touched with the brush than I've ever been. My brother is almost an idiot savant, for want of a better term. He has a master's degree in chemistry and he deals with food safety. That's his job. He loves doing that. He works in a lab. He is socially adept in as much as when he's on, he can perform and he does monologues and he will hold court and he will. But if you actually want to interact with him and have a conversation, that's a problem sometimes. He spent his entire from the time he was about 12 onwards, he spent his entire time wearing only black or white, and never the twain shall meet. He had an umbrella that he carried around and he called it Sigmund. We just thought, okay, this is a weird, weird, weird boy. He didn't relate well to others, etc. So we thought, okay, so my nephew was diagnosed Asperger's syndrome. We went, oh, well, obviously then, my older brother, there you go, that explains that. I was still thought of as, not really having been affected by that. And the reason for that is that my mum had always maintained that I was not related to my father biologically, if you know what I mean. Interesting. So I thought, okay, so that I can't possibly have been affected by that because I wasn't related to my father, I was told. My sister was also a prickly and difficult individual, still is. Love you. Touched with the brush as well, in sort of, but in a less obvious way. But then once my nephew was diagnosed, we went, well, obviously my sister as well, yeah, and my older brother, absolutely, obviously, absolutely. And then we started thinking about my late father, and we went, oh my God, obviously at the time it wasn't something that was thought about. It wasn't even a thing in those years.
Sure.
But he was clearly, absolutely, very, very autistic throughout his entire life. Now, as it turns out, about 2 years ago now, maybe, when I was living in England, I was just about actually ready to start thinking about coming home to New Zealand and etc. I had some contact on the internet had been seeking me out, trying to find me, or indeed any member of my family, myself, my two siblings, or my mother, or whatever else. And it was actually my late father's first family, who all live in Australia, and they were seeking out my father Tom's other family, us. And somebody had managed to find me and put us in contact. And so now I'm in contact with my late father's other family, and that's fantastic, etc., etc. As it turns out, through making that contact, there is absolutely clear, unambiguous, unquestionable evidence that I was absolutely my father's son. My mum had it wrong. There are clear family traits in terms of some body structures, some things you can look at in photos, some pictures and things. You'd go, there is no way I am not related here biologically. Okay. And then my mum turned around and said, yeah, actually my math was pretty poor there. I'm quite happy to say that you absolutely, I had it wrong. Sorry about that. Anyway, that said, you then look at that side of now that we've got access to that side of the family, the genetics, absolutely rife with autism, anxiety disorder, bipolar, all of it. It's absolute, as I say, and then I've managed now to trace the genetics back 3 and 4 generations right back to York in England in the sort of mid 70s sort of time scale. And we know who all these people were. I have photographs of these people from the time that cameras had been invented onwards. I have parish records. I have stories about these people. You bet. That's amazing. Absolutely genetic. Yeah, so that was a fantastic journey of discovery. So yeah, is there any family history? Oh my God, you bet. Oh yes.
I think that'll be some rich evidence in the future when we're trying to sort out this puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that covers family. Let's cross that one off the list. So, how about, did you have any other, what they typically call comorbid disorders or diseases? Any seizures, autoimmune, or anything like that?
Okay, so no seizures. In terms of the autoimmune stuff, as I say, in later years, so from the time I was about maybe 35 onwards, I started to develop very, very severe fibromyalgia, which, for those that don't know, is a condition where the person experiences serious, ongoing, unmitigated in the connective tissues and muscles and fascia of the muscles, sometimes in the joints, of an unexplained origin. It doesn't go away. It just gets worse and better. Usually, just worse and worse and worse. It's a horrible condition. It limits your life quality. There were days I actually couldn't get out of bed because I was so stiff and sore. My joints wouldn't move. My muscles wouldn't move. And fibromyalgia is an interesting one because when somebody presents to the medical profession saying, "Look, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm suffering," um, they can do any number of tests. They can look for high sensitive C-reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation, absent, or not to the level that you would expect of someone suffering that degree of pain. They can put electrodes on you and try and trace the actual pain signals moving up and down your nervous system. There aren't any.
Hmm.
They can put an infrared camera on the person who is suffering the pain. Even at the moment that they're suffering the pain, they go, "Look, oh, my arm is killing me." And if there was something going on there in that tissue, there would be heat, there would be inflammation that would show up on an infrared scan. No. But then they put the infrared scanner on the person's head, and there are areas of the brain that are just firing off left, right, and center.
Hmm.
So what I'm saying is the fibromyalgia thing is actually inflammation of the brain, and it's making the brain believe that it's receiving pain signals that it's not receiving. So the person genuinely believes, my arm is killing me, my hip is killing me, I have a pain in my back, I can't move my neck, whatever it is, because it can
Right.
present anywhere.
Hmm.
And that stuff is it's not imagined because it's very, very real, and I can promise you it's very real for the
Sure.
person suffering it. But there's nothing going on below this level in terms of anything you can diagnose. It's all in the brain.
Hmm.
It's all inflammation of the brain tissue. And again, a plant-based diet will aggravate that, and a diet which is absent of plant material will also be absent of those things that encourage that inflammation to occur. That will allow the brain to alleviate that inflammation, and that alleviates that fibromyalgia. So my personal experience is, after 2 weeks, 14 days on a carnivorous diet, my fibromyalgia gone, and I suffered that for 10 years.
I believe it.
Gone.
I had what was
So,
believed to be, crippling arthritis. I mean, I like to tell the story. You can imagine this giant meat puppet can't turn a doorknob one day,
yeah,
and like I basically had inflamed joints and pain in the joints to the point where I couldn't close my hand, and I went on a ketogenic diet, and I think that was literally completely no sign of any sort of arthritis within a month. I mean, like no sign. I'd rolled back the clock
yeah,
20 years. So I believe you 100%.
yeah.
Now, let me ask you real quick.
It's absolutely miraculous.
This is a little off script, but you know,
Cool.
as far as the signal for fibromyalgia uh, coming from the brain, do you think that there's some link between diet and inflammation in the brain and a different a development in neurological pathways that affects autism?
Yeah, I strongly do believe that, Thomas. I think that
You can call me Tom, by the way.
what.
Nobody calls me Thomas.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I wasn't sure. Tom's great. Um, yeah, it's while the whole thing with the brain is that it's a plastic, moldable series of connections between spider-like dendrites that come out of all sorts of different neurons, and they all connect to each other. That's how we learn things. That's how we learn how to move our bodies. It's how we learn facts. It's how we learn to allegiance or whatever it is that we do. These are all connections between neurons in the brain that are, this dendrite connecting with this number one on this one, connecting with number four on that one, and these connections can be broken and remade. And so, I mean, absolutely, if you've got an inflammation situation going on because your diet is wrong, that can absolutely, in a real and material way, that can affect the way that your brain is wired up, and can have long-lasting effects in that regard. So yeah, I absolutely believe that if my parents had known what I now know about nutrition while I was growing up and developing, and also if they had had any idea about the fact that I was, experiencing an autism situation, things could have been very, very different. That doesn't mean I necessarily would want anything different, actually. I mean, I think things pretty much happen for a reason. It's another way of saying it's the anthropic principle. Things are the way they are because they actually couldn't be any other way. It's basically the explanation there. Things have turned out for the best because there is a plan, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not saying I believe in a deity necessarily, or an overview from some kind of a god or whatever else that says this is my great plan. But what I'm saying is there is a plan, and things do, there is an order, things happen because that's how they were always going to. And so I don't begrudge any of the experiences that I've had or any of the problems that I've had. Actually, I think that they've all been part of informing who I now am, and I quite like the person I am now. There are some people online, believe it or not.
Right.
A lot of
Well,
people think, yeah,
there is sort of a dual sort of existence for autistic people, because you got people like us that are online, we're communicating, we're essentially what they call high functioning, but then you've got the other people who are severely disabled. They're not having relationships. They're not able to take care of themselves. More and more kids are being born who don't speak, you know. So, for those
yeah,
people, it's a different experience by far. And of course, people argue whether we really belong in the same category or not, which is, I don't really have a dog in that fight, but I see in particularly online a lot of the adult, high functioning adult groups. They're like, oh, I don't want to be cured. I don't want to be fixed. I'm great the way I am. I have my talents. I'll take the pain with the talents. But then I think, well, like I've got friends, that are my age that have kids, and it's a real struggle, and it's like
yeah,
there's a lot of pain and suffering that goes into maintaining those kids, even with all the love. And then you get to a point where you outlive your parents, and then you're in some sort of conservatorship situation. I've got a number of friends like that are going to face that one day or another. So as much as I don't feel like I need to be cured per se, or you need to be cured. I think that this conversation we're having is advancing the understanding, and I try and keep the dialogue open,
yeah,
even when it comes to controversial stuff like vaccines. I mean, I personally feel like
sure,
diet is very significant, you know. So I think that we need to be able to. I got some stupid notification on the screen I can't get rid of. But, anyways, it's a complicated situation, and I'm happy for guys like me and you,
yeah.
but there's a lot of other people to consider, right?
Um, it, it, it's it's an important thing. It's vital that we do talk about the autism spectrum, that we do communicate with others about what it is we're experiencing, what the differences are between us and normal folk, I guess, for want of a better term. That there is an understanding out there of the struggles and the difficulty that's involved in dealing with everyday life in our situation. That said, it's also very, very important that those of us who are experiencing those kind of things take some responsibility and say the world doesn't need to bend or make way for me just because I might be having this condition. It's not my fault. Therefore, the world has to, make room for me. No, no, I need to work every single day at bettering myself and taking responsibility for how I behave
Agree.
and how I think and how I react to others. So, for me, for the off script stuff, that's where I see all that stuff. Mm.
Very nice. Well, let me give you a chance to tell me about any other results you've seen in other people when you advise them on this way of eating.
Yeah, it's. I mean, in terms of the clinical sort of observational measurements of things, what we see pretty much invariably is the C-reactive protein, that global measure of systemic inflammation. Generally, that melts down and dissolves away to basically zero levels within a very short period of time, invariably. So you want some strong anecdotal evidence that, or inference, I should say, really, eating a diet which is devoid of plant is anti-inflammatory. There it is. Every single time, I have never ever seen anyone on a carnivore diet who has not seen a near immediate fall in their C-reactive protein to near zero levels. So that's a great thing right then and there. Some of the basic obvious things that you can also observe with people, there's a loss of extra body. They become slimmer, they become more cut, they become more buff. Sometimes there's an increase in muscle mass without even exercise occurring. Joint aches and pains go away. Some people will come back and say, I actually didn't even realize that I was having a problem. I just thought this was normal. I thought this was how life was. But now I realize that I was actually in a lot of pain all the time. And now I'm not. And that's
Right.
fantastic. I've seen people dissolve away bipolar issues, depressive issues. I've seen anxiety disappear in myself and also in others. I've seen chronic gastric reflux, acid reflux situation
Oh
dissolve
yeah.
away. Doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, that's a shocking one. If you want to really interfere with your quality of life, be in gastric reflux every day of your life and see how you feel.
Right.
That's not a good one. So that goes away every time because that's basically a reaction to some plant-based toxins. Really,
Hmm.
that's your body telling you, you got a problem here. Um, what else have I seen? I mean, I've seen all kinds of crazy, miraculous things. They're all anecdotes. I understand. We're not providing scientific evidences here yet.
Yeah.
And then these vegans that want to say, "Oh, have you got any evidence?" It's like, no, not yet. The reason that we don't have it yet is because, I mean, the carnivore diet is not new. We've been doing this for hundreds of thousands of
For
years,
sure.
just not in the last 100 or so.
Right.
Basically, we've lost our way. So, and at the same time, that's when the kind of science has been done and been developed. And so the science is all around comparing vegan and vegetarian diets to the standard diet,
Right.
because there was nobody particularly that was doing carnivore. So we don't have the data to do the studies yet. Be patient. Let some time elapse. The studies will be done. The science will come out. It will absolutely show that humans do far, far better on a carnivore diet than any other diet that's available. Um, when you're looking for hard outcome-based studies of what is the result when we put someone on this diet, yeah, they don't exist yet, but they will, and they will show miraculous improvements in health, lifestyle, enjoyment of life, etc., etc., etc. So that's coming in the next few years.
Do you got any tips for people who are trying to help family members or maybe their children adapt to this diet?
Yeah, the one thing I always do say to people when they're thinking about or indeed saying I'm doing it and I'm going to go to a carnivore diet is I usually say to those people, yep, great, that's absolutely a brilliant idea. I support that decision, pretty indicated, suggested diet for human beings throughout the lifespan. It's good for everybody. One size does fit all. Carnivore is the answer. Um, but here's the thing that you need to watch. What you swap from a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet or even a standard Western or standard American diet, you don't want to go from there and go straight onto a carnivore diet. Okay, so on Monday, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be a carnivore and just change your diet. That's a really bad idea. That will cause probably needs a little bit of time to adjust to what you're going to be doing. One of the very best, most effective ways of period, putting in that full stop, putting it to your body something's going to be different here and we're changing things around, is to throw in an absolute fast in between your diets. So you finish your standard diet or your vegetarian diet or your vegan diet, say, right, no more of that. That's been the problem. I'm going to start this on Monday. So what you'll do is you'll go Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, for example, I will consume no food of any kind. Now you can say I'm going to do that with salt water, which is a good thing. That's fine. Or you can say I'm doing that dry. That's a more extreme way of doing things. I wouldn't suggest that you undertake dry fasting without medical supervision. Personally, that's just my take on it.
Some
That's my
practice.
disclaimer, if you like. Um, but I would say, 3, 4, 5 days, optimally at least, complete fast, and then start eating your meat-based, animal product-based, carnivorous-based diet after that. That will ease that transition a great deal. That will stop a lot of those problems that you will definitely get, or will almost certainly get, I should say, if you just go bang one to the other. The reason, if nothing else, behind that is that there is a certain speciation, a certain numbers and kinds of different bacteria that live inside your gut. And what lives in there is very much determined by what you've been eating. And if you suddenly start feeding yourself a completely different diet, the bacteria that are in there will get upset with you and they will cause problems for you, is the simplest way of explaining that one. So if you then say, right, no food at all, then you're going to have, for want of a better terms, a bit of a clean out in there. And the longer you fast for, actually, the better to a point. Obviously, you don't want to do this for months on end because that's not a healthy or good thing. But even up to several weeks, I've even heard of people transitioning with a fast of up to several weeks. Most people have got hundreds and hundreds and thousands of calories stored on their body as excess body fat. You are not going to starve to death in a couple of weeks. So a fast is a good way. It's a good way of transitioning from one to the other. It helps you adjust psychologically. It helps your body to understand something is going to change here, Charlie Brown. This is going to be different. It wipes out most of the bacteria that have been living on your carbohydrate-rich diet, and so that when you then start to feed yourself meat, the meat-based bacteria can move in and do their job. It just sort of helps. So that's one obvious one. The second thing that I would suggest to people to help is get yourself, if you can possibly afford to do it, get yourself a professional advisor who understands the stuff, who's been through the stuff, who knows the stuff. Someone like Tom, someone like myself, someone like a Dr. Paul Saladino, someone like, any of these professionally qualified, highly experienced type people who can advise you on that. Even folks like Tristan from Primal Wedge Health runs a very good program of educating people there, and he's got a very, very large following as well. Guys like Frank Tufano can be a good source of information as well, although those particular guys don't necessarily have the qualifications and things. A lot of what they say is good, valid information. So qualifications are not really the end point. I mean, there are a lot of people who are highly qualified who are coming online and giving very, very bad advice. Okay, examples: Dr. Michael Greger, very, very bad advice. Mick the Vegan, not so good. Goji Man, a lot of the things he says very, very questionable in terms of, is this the kind of advice we should be giving people? And these are all people that have at least some kind of qualification. So I guess it's about picking where you get your information from carefully. Get yourself an advisor is what I would say when you're transitioning to carnivore. Someone that can sort of help talk you through it and alleviate your fears, because there are going to be times when you're going to go, oh, is this right? Is this normal? I've suddenly stopped pooing. Is that normal? Am I constipated? All these questions that we can answer because we've seen these things 100 times, 1,000 times. So that's the second thing, really. Other than that, what I would say to people is that the only person over whom you can actually exert any meaningful influence in terms of what sort of diet that person takes or how they think about diet or nutrition or anything else is you. You can't get your loved ones to subscribe to what you believe in. You have to let them come to it themselves. And if you do the right thing, if you do a sensible carnivore diet and you do it well and you transition well and your health comes right and the problems that you've been having disappear and stuff, they will see that. You don't
Lead
have to
by
sell
example.
it to them. Yeah, that's it. You don't have to sell them anything. All you have to do is do it. And in fact, if you try and sell them your ideology, if you sell them what you believe, then you're actually making the same mistake that the vegans make, aren't you?
Yep, for sure.
Nobody wants to be sold anything. For me, in a nutshell, that's where that stuff sits. I hope that's a good answer.
Excellent. So let me ask you, what do you eat in a typical day, and do you have a good recipe for fetid dingo kidneys?
Yeah, fetid dingo kidneys. Awesome. I knew that was going to come up. That was actually a line that I shamelessly stole from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series by Douglas Adams,
Oh,
who with us. It was a line in one of those books where he was talking about the veracity and quality of information that you can get from various sources. And that one has always stuck with me as something that's a load of rubbish. He referred to it as a load of fetid dingo's kidneys. Fetid means, smelly and rotten. And obviously, you know what dingoes are and you know what kidneys are. So pretty much that's that one. And it's kind of a line I've used ever since. Anytime I hear something from someone that's not necessarily such good information. So a typical day for me would be when I'm being adherent, when I'm being good, when I'm being a proper carnivore, if you like, when I'm not doing it wrong, Tom. I generally eat once a day only. That would generally be in the evenings for me, just because that works better for me. I don't need or have breakfast. I don't need or have lunch. I don't feel hungry at those times. There's no reason why I would. I'm fully fat adapted. I can live off my own body stores quite well, thank you. Um, I've got very good ketogenic abilities. There's no problem with providing my cells with energy. Um, there's no reason why my body shouldn't wait until the afternoon, early evening, late afternoon, early evening is what I'm trying to get out for my one meal a day. That's when it usually is. I love steak, grass-fed steak. Um, I, down here in New Zealand, we're very lucky. There is no grain steak issues really because all the livestock down here are grass-fed all year round. They are, raised and finished on grass. So long as you're eating the New Zealand beef, it's all good. I don't mind a bit of pork. A lot of people say that pork is dirty and all that kind of, well, whatever. I don't buy into that nonsense. I'm quite happy to have a bit of pork, a bit of bacon. I'll eat fish. I love fish. I'll eat shellfish, which I usually go and harvest myself. I just moved out actually, but I lived very recently, within 200 meters of the shoreline. And I could just go down and get Pacific green-libbed mussels at low tide anytime I felt like it.
Wow.
By the dozen or whatever. You could just go down to the rocks by the dozen, pick them off the rocks. We don't have the pollution issues that a lot of people have in a lot of parts of the world, so we can do that. I do consume cheese. I enjoy cheese. Not a huge amount of cheese, but I do have some. I've actually also really enjoyed goat's cheese from time to time too. That's really good stuff. Um, I'll occasionally eat some liver, which I need to force myself to do because I don't really like the flavour of it. All my meat is cooked personally. I don't go in for the raw carnivorous thing. Some people do, and that's fine. I don't consume milk or milk products, including yogurt, at all. I do, however, consume cream from cow's milk.
Mm-hmm.
I do have coffee, occasional meat juice. This one is a Max Gold meat juice, that one, from a local New Zealand brewery called Max. They brew a good brew of beer. Meat juice, by the way, for those who are interested in that. So, by no means am I a perfect human being in terms of the carnivore thing. And I've never claimed to be. I love eggs. Eggs are good in all their glory, in all their various forms. On a typical day when I'm being good, that's pretty much it. That's how it would be. Ground beef, love that. That's good. I love venison too, and sort of the gamey things as well. I have tried kangaroo meat. I've tried crocodile meat. I love those. I've tried ostrich as well. Duck, love duck.
Hey, every time I eat a duck, I wonder why we mess with chickens.
Yeah,
Ducks
very
are
much
fantastic.
more. Love duck. Yeah.
Every time I'm in a group like World Carnivore Tribe or 100% Carnivore and Beyond, I see the Australians start arguing about whether kangaroo is good or not. Half the people say they're giant rats and they taste terrible, and the other half say, oh my God, they're so delicious, I can't believe it.
Depends on how cured or how it's been aged or whatever as well. The Aborigines have a way of preserving it that is very much like a South African sort of jerky or biltong sort of situation. That's as tough as old boots. But if you can get good fresh kangaroo, young kangaroo, and the little ones, that there are two species of kangaroos. There's a small one and a big red one. So there's a small grey and a big red. The small greys are generally not as tough as the big reds.
It's good to know.
So that's that one.
So what type of exercises do you do? Do you do any working out or anything?
I used to be very, very active, actually. I used to run quite a few miles, which actually, as it turns out, is really actually quite contraindicated for human health. I mean, I was doing it at the time for a particular purpose, and that was to maintain my fitness for refereeing games of rugby league, which I did at quite a high level for about 15 years. I've, at various times on and off in my life, I've played cricket on a weekly basis.
I've heard of that.
Which is a sort of more high intensity burst type game. That's not a fit football or rugby league or any of that kind of things are. I've done outdoor and indoor climbing to quite a high level. I've enjoyed that. I used to be a powerlifter in my youth, believe it or not. Um, I used to be a bodybuilder in my youth
Hmm.
as well. I gave that away many years ago now. So I mean, I've tried all sorts of things. I've done all sorts of things. I mean, I have three degrees, two of which are in exercise physiology. So
Hmm.
that's absolutely my first thing is human exercise, human movement, that kind of thing. Prior to getting involved in the cardiovascular and medical and nutritional side of things. So that's kind of where that sits. These days, I mean, I really just undertake. I guess it's really, I suppose, spasmodic. It's not even designed in a sort of organized way or a planned way. I will try at least 2 or 3 times a week to get some kind of exercise. Usually, we'll take the dogs for a walk, something like that. Today, for example, before I came online with you, myself, lovely partner, 2 dogs, took a walk up a hill behind where we live here to look out up there. It's about an hour's walk up a hill. It's probably, oh god, maybe 500 or 600 meters in vertical elevation up behind us there. So it's quite a pull up there. I had a good look around up there. Pretty high intensity stuff. Sweat like hell. Come back down again. That was nice. We do a lot of kayaking. Well, actually, not as much as we would like to even of late. We're actually just going into the fall time now, so we're like
Oh,
summer's just about done and dusted, and so we've got that whole summer's finished feeling happening. But it's so we're recreationally active, but we don't have planned sports. We don't have planned training. We don't go to the gym. Um, yeah, that's pretty much how it is. It's
excellent.
just
It's a little more enjoyment.
activities of day.
You're enjoying
Yeah,
yourself
yeah, it's
rather than
about getting out.
just working
Sure.
out to
Yeah,
stay in shape or something.
that's it. Yeah, because I mean the thing is, on a carnivore diet, you don't have to work out to stay in shape because actually, once you've been on a carnivore diet for anything like a reasonable period of time, your body composition falls into line. Um, any excess fat will melt off over whatever period it's going to take to get rid of that, depending on how much you had in the first place, and some individual differences, of course.
Sure.
So, I mean, to give you an example, I'm 5'6" and 140 pounds dripping wet. Basically, there's no fat on my body to speak of. I've got a very small amount of nearly 50-year-old man paunch, as you would expect, which is probably down to the beer, actually, um, and the occasional non carnivore meal like I'm likely to have next weekend because it's my birthday. Um, but things are pretty good. I mean, one of the things that sort of always stuck with me was a line from Tim Noakes, Professor Tim Noakes,
Hmm.
basically, who said, you know, the benefits of exercise are unbelievable. And he's right. And he then went on to say, but if you have to exercise to keep your weight under control, then your diet is wrong.
Makes a lot of
And
sense.
that's how, in a nutshell, makes perfect sense. So, and I've heard it put another way by other people who have said you cannot outrun a bad diet,
I believe
and that
that.
really says the same. Yeah, it says the same message. So at the end of the day, exercise for me is not about keeping in shape physically. It's not about fat storage. It's not about looking good. It's not about being buff. It's about being recreationally physically active into the second half of my natural lifespan, which I'm well and truly looking at now. As I say, I'm having a birthday next weekend. I'm actually turning 47. For those that want to know, so I'm the best part of 50 years of age,
Hmm.
um, and that's just that's where it is. That's anything. Well, where the hell did 40 something years go? Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
did the diet directly eliminate any medications or anything you were on?
Yep, absolutely. I was on a cocktail. I was on a shitstorm of nonsense, actually, of dangerous, contraindicated, poisonous crap,
Hmm.
right up until really the end of 2016. I'll give you an outline. I was on an SSRI, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor.
Sure.
That was to supposedly control both bipolar depressive tendencies that I was having because of my diet, and also it was proposed to help with the fibromyalgia, which it didn't.
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
I was on another drug called pregabalin, or gabapentin actually, I
Mm,
think it was, which is a medication designed around people that suffer neuropathic pain syndromes such as fibromyalgia.
mm-hmm.
I was on a proton pump inhibitor
Of course.
for constant gastric reflux.
Right.
What else was I on? I was on blood pressure medications because my blood pressure was all off the chart.
Wow.
Uh, God, and there's probably a few other things I was taking as well that I can't even remember off the top of my head right now. But yeah, I
That's a
don't
pretty
take
good sample.
any medication, any kind now at all. I don't take anything. I don't need to take any of those things. None of those drugs actually control, particularly really helped, obviously, with any of the things I was experiencing. Um, they are all, they all have serious side effects. They are all very they are all things that I would say to people not so good. On the basis of a cost benefit analysis, certainly in my n equals one observation sphere, really I didn't feel like they helped. Certainly, for example, the drug that was designed to lower my blood pressure did no such thing.
Hmm.
It had no
Really?
effect on my blood pressure to speak of at all.
Huh.
My blood pressure was maybe 5 millimeters of mercury lower.
Huh.
Um,
The dent.
maybe.
Yeah, it's a tiny dent.
Not convinced. So, for the side effects you get from that, why on earth would you put yourself through that for a 5 millimeter difference in your blood pressure when actually your blood pressure was elevated 30 millimeters over what it should be? What's the point of that?
Yeah.
A drug that's supposed to deal with pain that doesn't deal with pain, well, if the drug is designed to deal with pain and it doesn't, what's the point of taking that drug?
Yeah.
Anyway, 2 weeks, as I said earlier, 2 weeks on a carnivorous diet, every one of those situations, every one of those problems vastly improved to what I would call the 98% level, 99.9% level, whatever, up there in the high 90s. 2 weeks by just not eating plants.
2 weeks with no plants. I like it.
So, yeah. Try it, boys and girls. You will never go back. You will never. You might transgress from time to time. And tell you what, yeah, that's the one. If it is a downside, I don't know, or whether it's actually a good thing. Once you've been a carnivore for a bit, if you transgress and you eat something that you shouldn't, the next day you will know about it. Your body will say, "Hey, Charlie Brown, we spoke about this. I warned you what would happen if you eat that shit, and you will suffer. I can promise you." And I think it's probably a good thing because that reminds us not to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to let you kind of wrap this up. Give me any theories you got on how you think the diet is the mechanism behind the diet that influences autistic symptoms or anxiety or something like that. And then just give me a rundown of
Sure.
your contact information and your YouTube channel or social media or
You bet.
whatever.
Okay, so really, the mechanism for me, a lot of research still needs to be done. A lot of things need to be clarified in terms of what causes what exactly and how it all interacts. What we do know for sure is that chronic systemic inflammation is not a good thing for the health of anybody, autistic or otherwise. If you are in an inflammatory situation and you have an autistic situation, it will generally tend to make managing your autistic situation much more difficult. It will put you in a worse position. I think there's no doubt about that in my mind whatsoever. I think that's a fair statement to make. Um, inflammation of the brain itself is definitely involved in that, and we really need to look into that a lot more to understand exactly how that works. We know exactly what the mechanisms of plants and plant-based so-called foods are in inflammation. We can go through those. Really, a good way to learn all about that kind of stuff is to go to my channel, and that kind of that does feather into that part of the answer to the question, which is how do you find me? Very simply, my name is Bart K. Bart as in Bart Simpson. K is spelled Kay. Do a Google search on that, and I'm sure you will have no trouble finding me at all. If you can't remember that, go for Nutrition Science Watchdog. If you put that into your Google search engine, the first 10 or 15 pages that come up will be all about me, both from people that support me and people who think I'm 7 flavors of arsehole as well. So, if you want some balance in terms of opinions about me, you'll find that there as well. My YouTube channel is called Bart K Nutrition Science Watchdog. I'm sure we can organise to link the URL to my channel under this video when we post it up. I'm sure that won't be a problem to do. My Patreon channel is also easy to find. It's just http:// then the word Patreon, which is patreon.com/Bart_K. That's it. Pretty simple. You can find me on the Book of Faces if you like. You will need to demonstrate that there are at least one shared connection for me to accept a friend request from you. Otherwise, you could be anybody, of course. If you know Tom, then that'll be no problem at all. Or indeed any of these other people involved in many of these online Facebook groups about nutrition. You'll find me in any number of those groups too. I'm members of all sorts of different nutrition groups. You can find me occasionally on Twitter. Just do a search on my name there. I'll show up, I think, pretty much. Or indeed, very, very occasionally on Instagram, but I don't really use that, so that's probably not the best approach. So that's pretty much where you can find me. In a nutshell.
Well, hey, Bart. It was really good getting to know you. I really appreciate your time. Hopefully this recording came out really good. Everything looks good so far, so I'm very optimistic.
Awesome.
But I'm definitely see you
Right,
online.
Tom, well, thanks.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks again.